You know that feeling. You're staring at this complex system. It's all dates, numbers, weird categories, and you just wish someone could, break it down. Well, good news. Today we're doing exactly that. We're taking a deep dive into the U.S. Department of State's Visa Bulletin for October 2025. And this isn't just some dry document, right? It's really a crucial roadmap if you're navigating the path to getting a green card to U.S. permanent residency. Our mission today is simple. Pull out the most important info, make sense of the deadlines, the visa numbers, and how different countries and visa types are actually impacted. We're using the official source, the October 2025 Visa Bulletin, Immigrant Numbers and Preferences. Think of it as your shortcut to being really clued in. Okay, so let's start with the basics. The bulletin seems to revolve around two main types of dates, final action dates and dates for filing applications. For you listening, what's the key difference here? What do you absolutely need to get?
Yeah, that's definitely the place to start. Understanding this is, well, fundamental. Think of final action dates as the final green light. That's when visas can actually be issued. Your priority date has to be before the date listed. Simple as that.
Okay, so that's the actual go date.
Exactly. Now, dates for filing applications, these often give you an earlier date, sometimes much earlier. Wow. It's basically a window to get your paperwork together, submit it to the National Visa Center, the NVC. It's about getting ready, getting your documents in the queue.
Okay. So one is prepping the application, getting it submitted, and the other is when they can actually approve it and issue the visa. Got it.
Precisely. Preparedness versus final approval.
And for anyone filing for adjustment of status, from within the U.S. with USCIS, they generally need to stick to the final action dates, right? That's the default.
That is the default, yes. However, and this is a really important however, USCIS could decide to use the dates for filing chart instead. They'll announce this on their website. That's www.ucis.gov Visa Bulletin info. They usually do this if visa numbers are looking pretty plentiful for a category.
So you absolutely have to check the USCIS site too, not just the State Department Bulletin.
Absolutely critical. Don't skip that step. USCIS has the final say on when you can file that adjustment application.
Right. Okay, another term that pops up a lot is oversubscribed. It sounds straightforward, too many people want visas, but what does it actually mean for an applicant when their category or country gets labeled like that?
It's a huge deal. It's not just a small delay. Oversubscribed means the demand is way, way higher than the legal limits allow for that category or country. So what happens is the final action date gets stuck. It often freezes on a date deep in the past, sometimes years, even decades ago.
Wow, decades.
Oh, yes. So you're not just waiting in line anymore. You're waiting for a visa number that literally doesn't exist in the current year's allocation. It becomes a real bottleneck. It can force people to look for completely different visa options or, unfortunately, just put their plans on hold indefinitely.
And this October 2025 bulletin, it's based on demand they saw up to September 3rd. So it really sets the scene for the whole of fiscal year 2026, which starts in October. It's like the starting pistol.
Exactly. These dates basically dictate the rhythm for the next 12 months.
Okay, so those dates handle individual timelines, but the bigger picture is controlled by these annual limits, and maybe even more importantly, the per-country caps. This is where the policy gets kind of fascinating. For fiscal year 2026, there's a worldwide limit of 226,000 for family-sponsored immigrants. Sounds like a big number.
It does initially.
And for employment-based, it's at least 140,000.
Right, those are the overall global numbers, but they get sliced up pretty quickly.
Yeah, because Section 202 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, the INA, sets this per-country limit. It's capped at 7% of the total annual family and employment limits combined. So, doing the math, that's only 25,620 visas per country. That seems really small for some countries, right?
It's incredibly small when you think about countries like India or China or Mexico, and it gets even tighter for dependent areas. Their limit is just 2%, or 7,320 visas. And this is exactly why certain countries are always oversubscribed. The demand from places like China mainland-born, India, Mexico, and the Philippines just swamps that 7% cap year after year.
Creates these huge backlogs we keep hearing about. Okay, let's dive into one of those major streams. Family ties. Section 4 in the bulletin covers family-sponsored preferences. The law sets up 4 main lanes, right? Can you just quickly walk us through them?
Sure. So first up is F1. That's for unmarried sons and daughters of U.S. citizens. They get about 23,400 visas annually. Then there's F2, which is the biggest category, 114,200 visas. This is for spouses and children and unmarried sons and daughters of permanent residents, so green card holders. And F2 is actually split. F2A is for spouses and minor children of green card holders. That's 77% of the F2 total, and crucially, most of these, 75%, are exempt from that per-country limit we just talked about.
Ah, that's key. So F2A has a bit more breathing room.
It often does, yeah. The other part, F2B, is for the unmarried sons and daughters, the ones who are 21 or older of green card holders. They get the remaining 23% of F2.
Got it. What's next?
F3 is for married sons and daughters of U.S. citizens. That's 23,400 visas. These waits can be pretty long, too. And finally, F4. This is for brothers and sisters of adult U.S. citizens. It gets 65,000 visas, but, well, this category is famous for having extremely long waits, like notoriously long.
Right, the multi-decade waits we hear about. Okay, let's look at the actual dates in Table A, the final action dates for family cases. C means current, a date means your priority date needs to be earlier, and U means unavailable.
Yeah, the differences are stark. Look at F2A spouses and children of permanent residents. For most countries, including China, India, Philippines, the date is A01 AB24. That's pretty recent.
Okay, February 2024, not bad.
But then look at Mexico for F2A. The date listed is O1 FEB23, a year earlier.
Wait, so Mexico looks worse, but hang on, you mentioned that F2A exemption for per country limit.
Exactly, you caught it. There's a special note. All F2A numbers provided for Mexico are exempt from the per-country limit. So even though the date looks older, Mexican F2A applicants aren't fighting within that tight 7% Mexico cap. They draw from a different pool, which often means they actually move faster or more predictably than some categories with technically later dates that are stuck under the country cap.
Wow, okay, that's a really important nuance. You can't just compare the dates directly without knowing about those exemptions.
Definitely not. Now, contrast that F2A situation with F4, the brothers and sisters category. The backlogs are just immense. For all chargeability areas, so most countries, the date is 08JN08, January 2008. And it gets worse for specific countries. India is 01 and G06. Mexico's way back at 08 APR01. And the Philippines is 22 APR06.
April 2001 for Mexico, that's almost 25 years.
It's staggering. You're talking about waits that span generations. It really puts a human face on these numbers.
Absolutely. It's hard to even comprehend waiting that long to join family. What about F1, the unmarried sons and daughters of citizens?
F1 is generally 08 and OV16 for most areas, China, India. Still a significant wait back to 2016. Mexico is further back, 22 and OV05, and the Philippines is 22J and O13. So substantial waits, but not quite the F4 level.
Okay. Now quickly, at Table B, the dates for filing for family visas. This is the get ready chart. How much earlier are these dates usually?
They can offer a decent head start. Look at F2A again. The filing date is 22 SCP25 across the board.
September 2025. But the final action date for most was February 2024. That filing date is way later.
Ah, good catch. Yes, in this specific instance for F2A, the filing date is actually much later than the final action date for most countries. This can happen, it shows things are moving, but it means you wouldn't use the filing chart for F2A right now if your final action date is already current.
Okay, so the filing chart isn't always earlier. You have to compare both.
Exactly. But look at F4 for all chargeability areas. The filing date is ERA1 MAR09. The final action date was OAJAN08. So there, the filing date is about 14 months earlier. It gives you a window to get documents into the NVC.
Got it. So it helps manage the workflow, potentially shaving off time later if you're ready to go when the final date hits.
That's the idea, yeah. Be prepared.
Okay, let's switch gears. Family ties are one big driver, but economic contribution is the other major one. Let's look at employment-based preferences, Section 5. This is often where you see the competition for high-skilled talent. Can you map out these 5 EB categories?
Sure. So first preference, EB1, is for priority workers.
Yeah.
Gets 28.6% of the visas. Think Nobel Prize winners, top executives, outstanding researchers, the highest tier.
Right, the superstars.
Then second preference, EB2. Advanced degrees or exceptional ability, also 28.6%. Usually requires a master's degree or similar. Third preference, EB3. This covers skilled workers, professionals, and a category called other workers. Again, 28.6% total, but there's a strict sublimit of only 10,000 visas for those other workers. That's a very tight category.
10,000 worldwide. Okay, that's small.
Very small. Then fourth preference, EB4, is for certain special immigrants, religious workers, broadcasters, etc. Gets 7.1%. And finally, fifth preference, EB5. This is the investment visa, employment creation, also 7.1%. But a big chunk, 32% of EB5 visas, are specifically set aside for investments in rural areas, high unemployment zones, or infrastructure projects.
Ah, those set-asides. Okay, looking at the final action dates, Table A for employment cases. Some good news here.
Some, yes. EB1, that top tier, is C for current for most of the world. That's great. And significantly, all three of those EB5 set-aside categories, rural, high unemployment, infrastructure, they're also C for current for everyone, regardless of country.
Okay, so if you're an investor targeting those specific areas, the path looks clear right now, visa-wise.
It certainly does. That incentive seems to be working, at least in terms of visa availability for now. But even in EB1, we see backlogs starting for China mainland born, whose date is 22 DEC 22, and India back to 15 EB22. So even top-tier applicants in those countries face waits.
And I imagine it gets worse further down, like EB2 and EB3 for India and China.
Oh, yeah. That's where the picture gets really tough. For EB2, India's final action date is 01 APR 13, April 2013. Most other countries are at 01 DC 23. For EB3, India is even further back, 22 AUG 13. China's EB2 is 01 JWAL 21, and EB3 is Air 1 SE Play 20.
Hey, 2013, we're talking a 12-year wait, potentially, for skilled workers from India in EB2 or EB3.
Easily. These are immense backlogs. Think about the impact. A highly skilled engineer from India applying today might literally wait over a decade just for the visa number. It has huge implications, not just for individuals, but for U.S. companies trying to retain talent, potentially pushing jobs and innovation elsewhere.
That really puts the global competition for talent idea into sharp focus. What about that other workers part of EB3 you mentioned?
Right. That subcategory is also heavily backlogged. The date is 15 JUL 21 for most, but for China it's L1 DEC 17, and for India it matches EB3 skilled workers at 22 AUG 13. And remember that 10,000 visa limit. It's actually even smaller because of an old law, NACRA, the Nicaraguan and Central American Relief Act. It reduces the available other worker visas. For FY 2026, that reduction brings the effective limit down to only about 150 visas.
Wow, 150 worldwide for that specific category. That's incredibly tight.
Extremely tight. And one more thing on this table, certain religious workers under EB4 shows U, unavailable for everyone.
Unavailable. Okay, we need to circle back to why that is. Now, Table B for employment, the filing dates. Does it offer much hope for those stuck in the EB2, EB3, India-China backlogs?
It offers some earlier filing possibility, but the scale of the backlog dwarfs it. For instance, India's EB2 filing date is 01 DEC 13. Yes, that's earlier than the April 2013 final action date, but still, December 2013. Compare that to all chargeability areas, where the filing date for EB2 is 15 JUL 24. The difference is just enormous. It really highlights the two-tiered reality based on country of birth.
Okay, let's talk about some of these special categories and crucial updates. First, the diversity visa, the DV lottery for October. It's meant to offer up to 55,000 visas annually from countries with low immigration rates. But that 55,000 number isn't quite solid, is it? There are reductions.
Right, it's not a fixed 55K in practice. That same NACAR law we just mentioned shaves a bit off, bringing the DV 2026 limit down to around 54,850. And then the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, for fiscal year 2024, signed last December, took another slice out of it. The actual DV 2026 limit is now expected to be around 52,000.
So nearly 3,000 fewer visas than the headline number suggests. For people relying on the lottery, that definitely makes the odds a bit longer.
It does. Every visa counts in that lottery.
Okay, so those roughly 52,000 visas get split regionally. For October 2025, what are the cutoffs for DV 2026 selectees?
Right. For Africa, the number is 17,500, but there are lower caps within that for Algeria, 14,500, and Egypt, 16,000. Asia gets 10,000, except for Nepal, which is capped at 6,000. Europe is 7,750. North America, just the Bahamas, gets 20. Oceania gets 1,100, and South America and the Caribbean have 8,850.
And a really critical point for anyone selected in the DV lottery.
Yes, absolutely vital. Your eligibility expires at the end of the fiscal year. For DV 2026 winners, that's September 30, 2026, you must get your visa issued and enter the U.S. by that date. No exceptions. It's a hard deadline.
Okay. And interestingly, the bulletin notes that the cutoff numbers for November 2025 are the same as October's.
Which suggests, at least for the very start of the fiscal year, not much immediate forward movement is expected in processing those DV cases. Something to watch.
Definitely. Now let's get back to that unavailable status we saw earlier. This concerns the religious workers, SR category, part of EB4. This looks like a really big deal.
It is. This isn't just a backlog, it's a legislative sunset. A law, H.R. 1968, only extended this specific program until September 30, 2025. That's why it's listed as unavailable starting in October 2025. The program is expiring.
So what does that mean practically?
It means no SR visas can be issued overseas, and no final action on adjustment of status cases can happen after midnight on September 29, 2025. And even more critical, anyone who has an SR visa must physically enter the U.S. by midnight, September 29, 2025. Just having the visa isn't enough. You have to be admitted by the deadline.
Wow. That's a hard stop. Anyone in that pipeline needs to be moving very, very quickly.
Extremely quickly, time is running out.
Okay, one less update area. Special immigrant visas, SIVs, for U.S. government employees. The same NDAA for FY 2024 seems to have some impact here, too.
Yes, it might affect certain current or former U.S. government employees abroad, and potentially their surviving spouses and children. But it's important to stress, this does not affect the main SIV programs for certain Iraqis and Afghans, the SQ and SI categories. Those operate under different rules.
Okay, so for those potentially affected by the NDAA changes.
The official advice is very clear. Contact your consular section directly. These cases are often complex and specific, so personalized guidance from the consulate is essential.
Makes sense. Okay, so wrapping this all up, what have we learned? We've navigated through this October 2025 Visa Bulletin, really breaking down those key dates, final action versus filing. We looked at the big picture limits, worldwide and per country, and saw how that 7% cap creates those huge bottlenecks, especially for family and employment visas from certain countries.
Yeah, and we dove into the specifics for family categories, seeing relatively quicker movement in F2A, especially for Mexico due to the exemption, but truly daunting decades-long waits in F4. And on the employment side, we saw some current categories like EB1 for most and the EB5 set-asides, but crippling backlogs in EB2 and EB3, particularly for India and China.
Plus those critical updates, the shrinking DV lottery pool, the hard expiration date coming for religious workers, and potential changes for some SIV applicants.
And it's crucial to remember, these aren't just numbers and dates on a page. This is about people's lives, families waiting to reunite, professionals planning their careers. It really shows the direct impact of U.S. immigration policy, demand, and just global demographics playing out in real time.
Absolutely. Which leads to maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder. When you see these persistent, sometimes decades-long backlogs, especially for certain countries and categories, how do you think this shapes global talent flows? How does it affect family reunification over the long term?
And what does it suggest about how U.S. immigration policy itself might be evolving or perhaps needs to evolve, especially when we see legislative changes like NACARA or the NDAA having such direct, sometimes unexpected impacts years later?
Really interesting questions. These bulletins are snapshots, but they tell a much bigger story. As always, for the absolute latest official information, make sure you check the source at the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Consular Affairs website. That's travel.state.gov. And remember that USCIS site too for adjustment filers. Thanks so much for joining us on this step dive.